Awesome. Awesome. Super excited. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We are super excited tonight. Welcome. I'm Dr. Emily from The Joy of Coding, and we are so excited to welcome Kyler Johnson today. He is a six-figure software developer, a senior software engineer for a cybersecurity or a cyber intelligence company. I don't want to steal your intro, but we are super, super excited to have him here, and we can't wait to hear about your story and about your journey. So Kyler, would you like to say a few words about yourself and where you are now?
Absolutely. So like you said, I'm a senior principal software engineer with a company called SecureWorks, which is a cyber intelligence company backed by Dell Technologies.
Awesome.
What I do is I build a software as a service platform for cybersecurity analysts, both with our company and with clients' companies, to identify threat vectors and react to them in a way that keeps their customers safe.
Cool.
Awesome. So cool. Yeah. Jason, did you have a question about that?
Man, I mean, where do you start? Honestly, like what was the first language you decided to learn?
So I guess I started with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, creating like basic websites and reactivity. And then I actually found myself working for DHL Global Forwarding at one point. And I was doing a lot of data entry stuff, and I was learning to code on the side. And then I'm like, it feels like a lot of this could be automated. So I got really into Python, and I ended up automating my entire job there. And then I didn't tell anybody. So I spent all day, every day learning to code. Just checking in on my program, make sure it was scraping things correctly and sending out the reports in the correct format and stuff like that. So as long as they sent correctly, I spent all day, every day learning to code. And
Oh man,
about 4 or
That's
5
a dream
months
right there.
oh yeah.
after that, I landed my first software gig.
I definitely might need to hook up on that automation thing though. That'll help me out at
Yes.
work.
Hey,
Awesome.
automate the boring stuff with Python. It'll take you a long way.
That's
Noted.
awesome.
Noted.
That's awesome. Love it. Great story. I mean, imagine that you're trying to learn how to be a software developer, working a day job, and you use your new skills to automate your day job so you have more time to invest in yourself as a developer. Like, that is a true software developer skill right there.
Oh man.
That's awesome. I love it. So now that's a great segue. So, Kyler, what does a typical day look like for you as a six-figure developer now?
So I guess I log in and I review all the stories that everyone is working on. I lead a team of UI developers on a very large project currently. And we have quite a lot of sales in the Salesforce pipeline depending on this. So there's a lot of pressure to get it done. There's a pretty aggressive deadline. So what I do is I make sure that the efforts that I work on the front end team at this organization. And so I make sure that all the work that we're doing is correctly coordinated with product management, and make sure we're meeting the expectations that product has, and that it coincides with the expectations the marketing team has, and the back end team changes are that support the stuff that we're doing in the UI has been deployed, and what their timeline looks like to make sure that we don't have any hiccups, right?
Right.
And then once I get that kind of logistical stuff out of the way, I get it. I put on a thunderstorm or some relaxing music, and I just start coding. So we have periodic meetings throughout the day. Of course, we have stand up, make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page, and if anybody's blocked, we can identify that early on in the day. Right. We're a remote company, so we have people kind of all over. So 10:30 for me is 7:30 for the folks out in California. So,
Jesus. Well, okay, so like just kind of step back a little bit, like when you're trying to coordinate and you're working on the front end, you got someone working on the back end. Doesn't that kind of conflict sometimes? Like you're like trying to do the reactivity and they're like, okay, this doesn't function well on the back end, so you have to change it.
So there is typically some friction there, right? So early on in my career, I was a full stack developer. And what that meant was we had people that could take everything from database design and normalizing data, build the SQL queries and like with whatever ORM we were using at the time, and expose that data through via APIs to the front end, and then we write the code in the front end to consume that API that we just built. So you have full stack context when you're a full stack developer. So, but the downside to that is it's hard to specialize in an entire vertical stack like that. So we had people that were very strong on the front end. They could do some incredible stuff with Angular, state management, React, and hooks and all that stuff. But they may not be particularly strong in following the third normal form of SQL and creating normalized database structure and querying it in a performant way, right? So, and on the flip side of that, we had somebody that couldn't center a div even with Flexbox, but they could tune SQL queries and churn out a result in 25,000 records in 10 milliseconds. So so you go to a team where I am now, where you have people that specialize in front end, and then you have another team that specializes in back end. They become specialized in their specific area. So the quality of the overall code base is better. However, that, there's pros and cons to everything in this, in life in general, I guess, not just this field, but, front end team members tend to lack context of the back end. And the back end tends to lack context of what the front end needs from them in order to do what they're doing. And sometimes it's like you have builders working on this end of the house and you have other builders working on this end of the house. You got to make sure that the house meets in the middle where the walls are going to line up, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the logistical stuff that I have to do is make sure that the walls are going to line up. I have to make sure that what the back end is doing, the data that they're exposing, the way that the structure that they're exposing it to us lends itself to what we need to do in the UI. And then if they have any limitations, they communicate that to us, and we'll coordinate very closely. But this type of structure absolutely requires a lot of constant communication.
Oh man, it just sounds like micromanaging, on the minute scale.
It's really cool because we have an empowered team structure. So inside of a larger UI team, I work specifically on one feature of our SaaS product right now. And I've worked on many of the teams here, but right now we have different empowered teams, and we have a lot of freedom to make choices within those areas to accomplish the goal. And we work with the backend team to make sure that product to make sure that we're meeting that goal the way everyone is expecting to get there, that we have a delivery plan in place, that we have things correctly prioritized. And, if something doesn't work out well for us on the front end, like we're having to write a lot of janky code to make it work because of the structure that the backend exposed it to us in, we can say, hey, backend team, this really isn't working for us. I thought it would, but it turns out we have this requirement and this is making it really challenging. Is there anything that is there any way that we could get this in this sort of structure? And because you always want to manipulate the data structure on the server if you can, right? Because it's more performant. You're not using your users' resources to do it. So, and we just work together like that. And backend team is typically like, oh yeah, no problem. We'll how's this format look? Great, that would be much better. And then on the flip side of that, on the UI side, if they're like, hey, we're currently giving this data to you in this way, but it's really causing us some performance issues on the back end. Could we change it to this structure? And we're like, yeah, sure. Whenever you get that ready, just let us know. We'll make the change on the UI side to accommodate that. So within our empowered team, we have a lot of freedom to make those types of decisions and help each other out. And the overall code base becomes a lot more maintainable, which is great, right? Because there's two parts to profit margin for your company. There's sales revenue and there's operational costs. Keeping a code base maintainable means lower operational costs.
Ooh, nice. Very nice.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I love what you're saying, Kyler, about how the front end, the front and the back end context. And because you have both of that, you can kind of communicate with both and give them that framing. I just love that. And that's actually why, whenever I'm working with students and helping them learn the basics of front end, like, no, I just want to be a front end developer. Well, you need enough back end that you can actually effectively debug the front end and know what's going on. Like you can't just, I think people can be short-sighted in just doing the front end. I'm not saying like go whole hog crazy pants, like spend all your time learning and mastering everything, but like you need enough so that you actually understand the relationship. So when you get a bug, you understand like what is the error message telling you and like where should you be looking to fix it.
Absolutely. Being able to provide that context to the backend team will really help them solve your problem faster.
Right. Exactly. I love that. Yeah. That's so cool. And I love that you were talking about how you have a stand-up, and just because some viewers in the group may be relatively new to the more advanced team-oriented side of software. So I just want a quick aside, like what a lot of software teams do is they meet in what's called like a scrum or a stand-up meeting where they just check in and coordinate for the day. So like if there's any big emergencies, we figure it out in the beginning of the day and then everybody can do their assigned tasks. So just if anybody's new to that process, just want to make sure, because some people learn to code, and like I'm sure Kyler, you experienced this. You learn to code by yourself, and then all of a sudden you're thrown on a team, and it's like a different ballgame, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you've been doing it a while, it's easy to lose sight of how much you've learned and how much you didn't know at one point.
Exactly. Absolutely. I love it. And one other follow-up, I want to say thank you so much for sharing the information about your day. It sounds like you have a really great company with a really great software culture. Like it's not, that kind of empowered development is not everywhere. Like it is definitely not ubiquitous. And so I was just curious, in talking about your typical day, I know some people in the group are, learning to code and they just have this dream of being a six-figure software developer. So your work, does it typically like land between certain regular hours? You get a lot of free time and flexibility where you can play and do your own thing. How does that look for you?
Right.
So my company is phenomenal when it comes to work-life balance. There have been times, so I guess I tend to get moved around to whatever team is working on the highest priority project at the time.
Nice.
So that means I always have an aggressive deadline. Most of
Oh man.
most of the time, with proper planning and consistent coordination, we can hit that within the normal 40-hour work week. So I've been with this company for 2 years,
Cool.
2 years today, actually. And I've only had to work at more than 40 hours a week, like twice. And
That's
that
great.
was just,
Oh, that's not bad.
that was just like, I was just like for a couple weeks there, I was working like, a few 10-hour days, but I was also on a call with team members and we're working together to get this stuff done. And like afterwards, we went and got coffee, toasted, and like got to chill out and just hang out on the call until like, 2 a.m. because the stuff got deployed and everything went off successfully. And, it's if that was a regular occurrence, that would be bad, right? But every now and then it gives you a sense of accomplishment, and it actually brings the team closer because it's like, yeah, we did that. We rallied together to get this done, So
Yep. I feel that.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that, Kyle. That's awesome. That's where you want to be, right? Because there's some companies that do not necessarily honor that, and they are poorly organized. But I think the commitment to a well-run, empowered development structure is partially responsible for those results, right? Because the companies that tend to have overworked developers tend not to value investing in those operational costs, the maintainability of their code, and having a process that actually serves the needs of both the end user, the clients, and the developers, right? So kudos, hats off to your company. It sounds like an awesome place to work.
it is my best work experience, and I've had some pretty good ones, but it's I gotta say it's the best that I've worked for.
Cool.
That's terrific. Wonderful. So, Kyler, can you tell us a little bit about your story of how you became a six-figure developer? Because my understanding is that you're self-taught.
I am. So, full disclosure, I did go into a software design program at one point. And I did some of the basic classes that taught design principles. And there was one C# class that I did, and the instructor was not there at all, like never. They had no questions. And like, so basically I was always on Stack Overflow. I was on Pluralsight with this, like learning the C# course from, I think it might've been Deborah Kurata or John Papa or whatever, but one of them taught the C# course on Pluralsight, and I'm like on there trying to figure out how to accomplish these tasks in this class. And anyway, I got nothing from that program except a little bit of student debt, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and then I just happened to land my first job like not long after that. So I'm like, yeah, there's no reason to continue with this.
Right.
So
Like,
I do have degrees in modern languages with a concentration in Spanish and English. My goal was to be a high school teacher and football coach. But I changed that when, when you're young and naive, you tend to think that I just need satisfaction, right? I don't need a lot of money. And, then you get older and you hit the real world and you're like, well, the money's not great, but at least I have satisfaction. And then you work in the education system and you don't have satisfaction either. So, I needed a change. So, I left there, went to Verizon, and actually made a lot more money selling phones, and which is, some might call sad, but that was my first exposure to like technology and how technology can make your life better, because I had to learn all these apps, and all these people had smartphones, and I was a country boy from South Georgia, right? I grew up fishing and hunting, never thought I would do anything technology related, never even considered it.
Yeah.
And then I got into that world through Verizon, and I'm like, okay, technology can make our lives easier or better. And I'm like, so how does this work? And then next thing I know, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to do this. So I started, I guess I started learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, because I really wanted to get into web development, software development. My original goal was to actually save up enough money to go back to school to get a degree in controls engineering so that I could work on robotics, specifically controls processing. So, but I got into software development, loved it so much that it wasn't worth there was not enough return on the investment for me to go do that.
So like, your interview process, what was that like, them knowing that you were a self-taught developer? Did it make it harder to get that position, or
So for me, yes, it was very hard, and there's a couple reasons why. The first is I didn't correctly market myself. The second was I didn't do a good job of showcasing my skills. So, and I think we have some questions later that touch on that, but, so I'll get to those, later, but
okay.
I had applied for around 1,200 jobs, and I had about 42 interviews before I got my first job. And again, that was harder for me because I didn't have any friends in software, didn't know what I was doing. I didn't correctly market myself, and I didn't showcase what value I could provide to a software company. And because of that, nobody looked at my resume a second time. So, I kind of got lucky. Somebody saw my language skills, and they just happened to need a developer who could also speak Spanish. And so that actually helped me. They turned out not to need my Spanish ability at all. And so I just got the opportunity. They brought me in for an interview. They asked me some problem solving questions and were impressed by my answers. And so I got the job, and then I worked really hard to keep it and to make sure that they knew that they made a good choice when they decided to invest in me. So
Right on, man. That's awesome.
Wow. Awesome. What a great, thank you so much for sharing that story about what it can be. I mean, yeah, I think the job market can be really, really challenging. Now, just out of curiosity, do you think if you had a program that actually supported you in polishing your resume, polishing your interview skills, your tech interview, your problem solving skills, making sure you have that confidence both in your technical ability and in how to answer questions on an interview situation and negotiate, do you think that a program like that also gave you like the team experience, right? So that's hands-on software development experience. Do you think that would like have helped you on your path, maybe accelerated that for you, that journey?
100%. What you're doing with this Facebook group would have absolutely helped me. And I probably wouldn't have had to put in, put 10% of the job applications that I did.
Right. I know. Yeah, for sure. And I know we try to get that number down a little bit lower inside. So like I run the Facebook group, and that's our outward facing support for this process. And then I also have the Joy of Coding Academy where I just wanted to like throw that in there because I was self-taught as well. My ultimate goal was actually to teach others to code. So I didn't go on that same stereotypical job hunt. I went on a job hunt, but it was the academic side, not the industry side. But it still took me 6 years on my own with degrees that didn't help me. I still had to be self-taught. And so, right, it can be a long slog. So yeah, absolutely. So I really appreciate that, that you agree that like something that's giving you that hands-on experience, it's giving you those fundamentals and that confidence can hopefully fast track and sidestep the 1,200 job applications. Like, oh my goodness, like that's good for you. Kudos.
Hustle. That's a hustle for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I know I like to try, like I've helped some people get jobs. And it's like they apply 1 or 2 places because we try, like you said, you didn't have the connections, right? We try and leverage those connections, right? And get that experience on there so you don't go in cold. Wow, kudos to you. That's awesome. Somebody took a chance. And that's how it can be sometimes, even if you don't apply to 1,200, even when you're applying to a smaller number, right? Like you can get in there and somebody sees like that special something that you bring that they're looking for. And that's always one of the fast paths, right? It's like you bubble up to top, whether or not you have like the absolute best technical skills. If you can eke out the other candidates in some other metric, it gives you that in.
I have helped over the past few years. I've helped 30 people land their first software job, and
nice.
And I was able to give them the advice that I wish I had, and that's something I'll share later when you ask that question. So stick around.
Great. Awesome. Love it. Yes, I do. I shared with Kyler some interview questions in advance. So he's prepped and ready. So he knows what's coming.
Sweet.
Awesome. And I think we're almost there. I did have one, because you already kind of answered one in the other. I do have a question about, was there kind of a key moment for you where everything clicked for you as a coder?
No, not really.
Okay.
So I felt like I struggled for a while. Like a lot of people have heard Imposter Syndrome, where you feel like you don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that really, really hardcore for at least the first couple of years. And while I was making constant epiphanies, like it got to a point where I was making constant epiphanies, like stuff that I read or heard months ago, like suddenly started making sense because so like it's one thing to read about a solution to a problem, but it's one thing to actually encounter the problem, think about it, and then understand why that solution works. Because the problem early in my career is I read, hey, you use this is here for you when you encounter this scenario or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what the application of that is. Yeah. So then I would encounter a problem and I'm thinking through that problem and I'm like, so I need this to be able to do this, and this. There has to be a way to meet these requirements. And then all of a sudden I remember reading about that thing, that API or whatever, that I didn't have any context for previously and didn't understand. Well, now that I've encountered the problem that it solves, I have an intimate understanding of what it does and why I need it. So I was making constant epiphanies like that when I was working through these things. And that's why it's so critical to learn. You can't just follow tutorials. You have to build stuff. You have to, because when you're following tutorials, they make these decisions for you.
Right.
So like, that's why it's easy when you're self-taught, it's easy to do these tutorials and feel like you're making progress. And then you go to build something on your own. You're like, what do I do? Like you're frozen.
I think we actually, I might have talked about that earlier. It might have been just me and Emily, how I talked about how I was doing like Udemy and I was just following along, but I wasn't really retaining all of it,
Right.
maybe just like 15% of it. And then the rest of it, I would just forget when I try to do it on my own. And then once I got into this course, it's just like, since I got to read and actually do things myself, I retain so much more.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And a lot of students end up coming to me when I talk to them, what's your biggest barrier to learning to code and becoming that 6-figure developer? And I'll hear about, well, tutorial, how it overwhelmed, but also like, they keep doing these code along videos and following these tutorials, these exercises, and they go to do their own thing. And it's just deer in headlights, blank page, like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Because they're not learning the problem solving piece. Like that's the part that you can't simulate. You can't watch somebody else do it. You have to build those pathways in yourself. Yeah. So I probably sound like a broken record, but like every day I'm like, right, you have to do a project. You have to do a project. We have to do projects. We have to apply it. Yeah. And so that's awesome feedback that we're creating an educational system for this that actually is project focused.
I do want to add a little bit more to my answer there.
Sure.
Like, there wasn't any one epiphany. It was a series of epiphanies over the course of 2 years.
Okay.
So early on in my career, like anytime I wanted to do something, I had to look up tutorials or like Stack Overflow issues where the code was posted like this solved my problem. And and I tried to understand why that worked, right?
Good.
Always tried to understand why that worked. And if I didn't understand something, I asked questions. And it's easy to get to a place where I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to look like I don't know what's going on or like that I'm not smart enough to figure this out. But nobody's going to think that about you. You have to ask questions if you don't understand stuff, because that's the most direct path to getting better, to learning. You have, especially if you've landed that first job and you have experienced developers right there around you that already have the context of what you're working on, you have to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you are in an environment where that is discouraged, you got to find another environment.
Yeah.
So
that's probably going to be one of my biggest humps to get over, is like really being able to just speak up when I'm in a bind.
And
that was me.
Yep.
That was one of the hardest hurdles for me to get over, because I have always been I've always been able to figure things out quickly. Software, like learning to code, humbled me. So like it's hard for everyone. So you do have to change the way you think, but don't feel like because you have to change the way you think that you can't learn it. It is going to be hard. And if it wasn't, more people would do it, right? And they'd pay us less. but it is going to be hard, but that, as long as if you keep trying and be consistent, you can't like work on it for a day and then come back a week later and expect to retain what you learned last week. You gotta, even if it's just 30 minutes a day on a consistent pace, that's better than doing 5 hours on a Friday or on a Saturday and then not doing it again until Saturday of the next week. So consistency is key, building on what you learned and continuously using it.
We literally this yesterday about the routine.
Yep.
I
love this. Absolutely. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It doesn't have to take that long, right? Like the fast path is 6 months, at least that's what we were, although I've seen students do it in 3, like, or longer, like it's the average. But for sure, like it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it's that consistent habit of doing it that really gets you there. So it's awesome advice. Thank you so much, Kyler, for that. And so, now we're getting we're stepping into the advice phase where we're really tracking well. And so, Kyler, my question for you is, what do you wish that you could tell your former self about the journey to become a 6-figure developer?
So what I wish I could have told myself before is put yourself in a manager's shoes. What does when a manager is assessing talent to decide whether or not they want to hire, what are things they have to consider? Right. So they need to be, hiring is a risky process for businesses, right? If they make the wrong hire, it is expensive, and it could be potentially devastating, not just on from a productivity standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint. So they need to, when you're a candidate, you have to think about, what can I do to make those doubts the hiring manager might have about me go away? How can I eliminate those doubts? So one of the ways is to have a degree, right? You have a piece of paper that says, hey, I've been sitting in a class for 4 years, and I know some stuff. That helps, right? But what if you don't have a degree? Well, in software, we're kind of a unique industry in that, hey, you can build something, deploy it, and make it accessible to anybody in the world. Okay. You can showcase your skills to anybody in the world and remove that doubt. So I focused on building a portfolio early on that said, hey, I'm Kyler Johnson. I'm a developer, and I know these technologies, and that didn't resolve those doubts, right? Yeah, it gave me a web presence, but it didn't resolve those doubts. I had some basic projects up there on that, on my original portfolio at the time. I created a responsive e-commerce design and that sort of stuff, but nothing that told a hiring manager, hey, this guy can come in and do something productive. He can do something useful, unless they needed somebody to just write CSS, which, I mean, I was pretty decent at CSS, and you can tell that from my portfolio, but that's not going to be common, right? So
no.
What I wish I could go back and tell myself now is, you need to build something, deploy it, and it needs to be something that somebody can log into and accomplish something, even if it's just to look at cat photos. They can log in, look at cat photos, save their favorites, and that's it. Even if it's something like that, you got to build something, because something like that will show, hey, they know the basics of OIDC, meaning that you can build a login system. So a user can log in. You know how to call APIs to get cat photos, right?
Right.
So they know how to consume an API endpoint. They know how to display that on the screen. They know how to manipulate the DOM to show the results from an API. They know how to update a database, some sort of persistence where they can save their favorite cats, right? And if you really get down to the basics, pretty much everything we do is sending and receiving data via HTTP or a socket connection. But if you can show that you can persist data, perform CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete operations on data, and display the results in the UI, you can be productive. A hiring manager is going to look at that project and say, well, this person right here has a degree, and I see here that they have a few projects in their GitHub repo, but I don't know if that was done as part of class, and I don't know how much help they had.
Right.
They might be productive. They have a degree, so they have some knowledge.
Yeah.
But this candidate, they've built and deployed a fully working web application. I know they know how to make HTTP requests. I know that. And then, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring this person in for an interview. And then what you have to do is be able to talk intelligently about what you used to build it and how you built it. And if you can do that, you'll land a job.
That's probably going to be one of my biggest tasks right there, is learning how to basically speak the language when I'm in an interview and explain what I did, piece by piece.
Yep.
I've got a tip for that too.
Cool.
Love it. Or are you going to share that now, or are you going to save it for later?
I think you have a question about that,
I
right?
do. Okay, cool. I'll hold my tip. I'm typing as we go, like I'm taking notes for anybody watching later. And so I just love that. Thank you, Kyler. And I think actually the cherry on top that I've observed with the students I've helped get those six-figure jobs is when you do that project like you described, but you're actually working on a team, and you can see it from the GitHub record, right? Like it doesn't lie. The commit history doesn't lie when you're collaborating. Like you can see if you're what level of development process you're implementing. And so the cherry on top is when you actually work in a team and get client feedback from someone who's consuming your software to accomplish some task in their professional life. Like for me, that's where the slam dunk comes. And you can put that testimonial like right on your resume. Like you're in, man. Like you delivered working software. That's exactly what a six-figure software developer does.
Very nice.
Awesome. Cherry on top. That's what we do inside the Joy Coding Academy, by the way. So for everybody watching at home. Awesome. So I do have one more question, Kyler. So this is awesome. And I can't wait to hear your tip. I'm on the edge of my seat here. Any advice for aspiring developers? Like, so a lot of people in our group right now, they're learning to code, they're just starting out, or they're getting on the job hunt, trying to figure out how to translate their skills into that six-figure software developer job. And so those that are just starting to learn how to code versus about to launch into the job market, do you have any tips for them as aspiring developers?
I have 5 tips.
Oh, all right. I can't wait.
The first is don't just follow tutorials. As we said earlier, you have to build something. Find a project that you think is cool. I don't care if it's not useful in your day-to-day life. You just need to build something that accomplishes a task. It can be a financial planner. It can be, log in and save your favorite cat videos from an API, right? It can be create a Pokédex application if you're into Pokemon.
Done that.
Right. So there is a really awesome free to use Poke API, by the way. You can consume all that data. I built some sample projects using that, but anyway, so the third thing is, was I on two? Was that
you just said the first thing. You said the first thing.
Yeah, you're on the second.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So second thing is you have get a Twitter, watch what you post on Twitter.
Yeah.
Use the lists feature and start following software developers about technology and frameworks. If you want to stay up to date in the technology industry with new versions that are coming out, everybody has a Twitter presence. Every technology, every framework, the people who work on that framework. If you stay up to date with that stuff, you use Twitter's lists feature to do that.
Okay.
You will always know the latest things coming out. Your coworkers are going to be like, how do you know that? Like, that was posted 3 hours ago. How do you know that? And it's like,
okay.
Like you're always on top of things when you do stuff like that. That's been a big help for me. The third thing is, and this is the tip that I alluded to earlier, when you want to be able to talk about stuff, listen to podcasts. One of the biggest hacks that I have ever encountered in my entire career was listening to podcasts. At first, early on in my career, I didn't understand half of what they were saying. Yeah. But I kept listening to them and what it helped me do is understand the vernacular, right? Because if you don't use the right terminology, you can accidentally display ignorance.
Yes.
Right. So like if you go into if you're a beginner and you go into an interview and you're like, yeah, I made an HTTP request to this, and that while they may not pick that out and say that that's the wrong terminology, because it's technically correct. You made an HTTP request, right? But your typical developer would just say API call. I made an API call. So it little things like that can make you sound more experienced. And moreover, when you're listening to all these podcasts, you're going to pick up on nuggets of information here and there. Throughout my career, people have been like, well, we have to figure out a way to solve this. And I'm like, hey, there's a library does this. And it does exactly what you're trying to do. Like, it got to the point where anytime somebody encountered a problem, they're like, Kyler, do you know of a solution to this? And I'm like, yes, I do. And it's because I heard it on JavaScript Jabber 2 months ago, or I heard it on the .NET podcast or .NET Rocks. Like last year, they talked about this UI framework that would allow you to build for multiple platforms with one code base. You know, like listening to podcasts has been a huge career hack for me.
Man, I'm telling you.
Awesome.
You know,
That's amazing. And Kyler, are you willing to share, and it doesn't have to be now, or links like we can post on the comments later to the interview, like just some example podcasts you'd recommend, or like we can post them to the group just so people see them. I think this is amazing.
Yeah. So I have a lot of them I listen to. So
whatever the easiest way to share.
I don't know, but I can actually on your group, Six Figure Developer, I can actually write a list and post it there.
Perfect. That'd be amazing. Thank you so much. We'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's been a huge career hack. And I think I have one more tip, right?
Yeah, well, you're up to 3. So you said 5. So we're on 4 now.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Get to
it. So yeah. So the 4th tip is if you're an aspiring developer, consistency is key. We talked about this earlier. And a lot of people that I have tried to mentor over the years, they would like spend one weekend and do 12 hours worth of learning, right? And then it might, they'll get burnt out on that because next weekend they just want to go to the lake, something like that. And then they don't do anything for 2 weeks. And it's like, they forgot most of the stuff they learned. They don't know where so like the first hour they have available to them in their schedule, they're just trying to figure out what they were doing last. And then they don't remember a concept they watched in a video 2 weeks ago that they never got a chance to apply, right? So, you've got to come up with a routine. It's imperative, even if it's just 30 minutes a day. You have to get your brain into the developer mode at least once a day. If you don't have time to like actually do any development work that day, listen to a podcast while you're doing the dishes, or while you're driving home from work, or while you're mowing the grass. Listen to a podcast. Like get your mind on development, learn something. And then like whenever you have it available, even if it's just 30 minutes a day, set aside 30 minutes a day, put away your phone, because it'll distract you when you get a notification on Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
Put it away so you can't see it and get distracted, and spend 30 minutes zoned in to do whatever, even if it's just 30 minutes.
I got that.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, you got one more.
One more is network as much as possible. Set up a LinkedIn. A lot of the most, when it comes to news in the tech industry, Twitter is the best, hands down, to stay current. But if you want to, and it's good for networking, but the best job opportunities that I've had in my career came from LinkedIn.
Okay.
If you have a strong LinkedIn presence, the amount of people that are reaching out to you to try to hire you will drive you nuts.
Wouldn't that be an awesome place to be in?
It would be.
At one time, I was desperate to just get an email back.
Yeah.
And now just relatively few years later, I get 50, 60 emails a week of people trying to hire me. And then I'm like, I'm not looking. They're like, well, what would it take for us? Like, what would it take to convince you to leave?
Oh man, really?
And I've had companies offer me like a ridiculous amount of money. But for a variety of reasons, I want to stay put for now. I love what I'm working on. I love the team I work with. I've made some lifelong friends with this company. And the technology, like the cybersecurity space and that stuff is just so interesting to me. But like there aren't very many companies willing to beat what they pay me. So
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for these tips. This is awesome. And I love that idea about, putting yourself in the employer's shoes and hiring, and what are they going to be looking for? Because, hiring is a risk. And to be honest, in most situations, hiring is like you get a date and you're married,
Oh
right?
man.
You interview, and then, I mean, and because it's really hard once you hire somebody, it can be challenging to not hire them, right? Like once they're in and there, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and it can be really challenging. Most people don't want to say you're fired, right? Like, so it's a really big risk. Like once they're in, they're kind of in as long as they want the job, right? It can be very, I mean, unless they do something like really egregious, like it can be challenging to find a place for the wrong hire, if that's the way it turns out. It depends. You might have somebody in your company that's really willing to do that to blow, but not everybody is. And so people get in, they get trained, and sometimes it's, well, they're not perfect, but they're good enough for some of these other things. So it can be a really fraught process. So if you've got a connection in there, right? Like you've got something that gives them confidence, and you maybe a connection with somebody, like, and they know you're like not crazy. I like, oh my goodness, I've experienced that at the academic level. Like someone that's like, oh my goodness, like they're like, we couldn't get away fast enough. Like we were stuck like for a whole year, and it was too long. Like, I mean, it can be really challenging process. So I love that you're focusing us on that, and building ourselves, marketing ourselves, being on Twitter, LinkedIn, like all these amazing things, keeping up with it all. And just really that mindset, like basically what you're promoting is full immersion, right? Like fully immerse yourself in 6-figure software developer land, like learning it, doing it, listening to it, right? Like whether it's on a jog or a run or a commute to work, just get in there and get that mindset. I love that. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing, Kyler.
absolutely.
Yeah. Any other, and if anyone's watching, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. Do you guys, Jason or Alyssa, do you guys have any questions for Kyler while he's here?
No questions, but the podcast, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Jason, do you have any other questions today?
Man, I mean, I do, but I'm not trying to take up a whole lot of time. It's like,
I love the answer questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I came across so much stuff like I think it's called Code Wars.
Mhm.
And it's just like basically like a game where you figure out these coding problems, depending on what language you're trying to go into. And I came across this, I was looking on YouTube and I came across it, and I'm just like, anything to like get me coding and just doing it day by day, even if it's just a little bit at a time. So I really appreciate just like the knowledge, the wisdom that you're bringing here right now.
Code Wars is useful. It's completing those katas.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, some of them are really challenging.
I mean, the first one was challenging to me. So I mean, and it was basic.
Yeah, there have been some that took me 6 hours to solve.
Oh,
And it depends on the problem space too. If like the type of problem that it is.
Yeah.
Because if you've solved things similar to it before, it's easier to you. But somebody who hasn't, solved anything like that, they may struggle with it. And likewise, they may do something easily that you're struggling with just because they've run into a similar problem before and you haven't. So it's experience plays a part in this.
okay.
I've seen senior developers, very knowledgeable senior developers, get humbled by junior developers who have thought a lot about one particular problem that a senior developer has never encountered.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my only other question was like, what are the negatives of being a developer?
Ooh, good question.
So this one is probably the toughest question that I've been asked. For me, I'm the type of, I love intellectual problems.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. something that I can exercise my brain on. I'm the type of person, when you give me a problem to solve, I can't think about anything else until I solve it. I've just got to solve it. I've got to go learn whatever I needed to solve it.
Yeah.
This stuff is incredibly interesting to me. I've been doing development for 6 years professionally, going on 7 total, and I am it consumed my life almost totally. I would the first 4 or 5 years of my career, I would code all day at work, and I would pivot to my L-shaped desk to my personal computer and code for another 4 hours on personal projects.
Oh man.
And
hardcore.
I probably coded 80 to 100 hours a week for the first 4 or 5 years of my career. And so, but I got totally consumed by it. So there are cons to that, right? I used to be a pretty fit guy. And during that time period, I would encounter a problem that I couldn't solve. And that time I was supposed to be at the gym.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, it was midnight, and I'm I finally figured out the problem, but my gym time was gone. So I started to have health problems because of the sedentary lifestyle that I lead as a developer, and I get so consumed in some of these problems that it's nothing for me to sit and be consumed by this for 4 hours, and 4 hours later I'm like, oh dang, I haven't moved in 4 hours. My mind has been racing, but I haven't physically moved in 4 hours. So for me, that started to cause health problems for me. And so a couple years ago, my wife and I had a daughter, and
congrats.
3 years ago now, I guess. So she just turned 3 on May 2nd. But
congratulations.
So I'm I've got to get my health figured out, and I've got to, take a step back and restore a little bit of balance to my life. So here recently, I've only been, devoting a few hours outside of work every week to whatever it is I want to learn. And of course, going to the gym and back from the gym, and while I'm doing chores, while I'm mowing the lawn, I'm still listening to all the latest podcasts that come out. So I'm still learning a ton about what's coming out, when to use it, when to reach for it, what the new updates on this latest technology are. I don't sit down and code as much outside of work as I used to, just because I have to restore some balance to my life. And last couple of years, I've made a lot of strides in getting my health back. So there's but that is one downside to development, is that it's a sedentary lifestyle. So you have to make it a priority to stay active.
I feel that 100%, and I've been seeing it. I've been gaining some weight in the past month. So I feel you 100%.
Yeah, setting those boundaries.
Yeah. I think they have the under the table stair climber things you can get.
Oh yeah.
I could never hold with that. I had one.
So interesting. I was listening to Syntax, which is one of the podcasts I listen to religiously, right? It's hosted by Scott Talinsky and Wes Boss. They're big React fans, and a lot of the stuff that they talk about is React and Svelte. Scott Talinsky recently got really into Svelte. But anyway, they I think it was Scott that recently got one. Anyway, one of them recently got an under the desk treadmill or whatever, and they were, or a pedal thingy. Yeah. So, and they were talking about, they thought that they wouldn't be able to concentrate, while they were doing it. And they were like, well, after a few minutes, you just forget you're doing it. And and the equivalent is that they their little stepper or whatever that calculates those steps, calculated that they were taking 6,000 extra steps a day once they got it. And they just actually forgot they were doing it. So I don't know if I'm going to try that.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I don't know if I'm going to try that, but I go to CrossFit during my lunch.
Bro,
Yes.
love you. CrossFitter right here. CrossFit.
And it about kills me but the community around fitness with like CrossFit, it's not for everybody, but if you like a big community and that sort of stuff, CrossFit is awesome because of the community around it. It helps you stick with it.
Yes.
But
yeah,
It's
and as
great.
coders, we're all about efficiency too, right? Like finding the efficient physical activity. Like, for example, I know for me, like I hate cardio because that's repetitive. I'm a computer scientist because I don't like any repetitive tasks. And so like running, cardio, no, not my bag. But I found a local gym that does weight. I really enjoy weightlifting. I sometimes do it on my own, but I found a gym that does these 40-minute weightlifting that are customized to you. And so like I go 2 times a week and that's it. I'm done. 40 minutes twice a week. Talk about efficiency. And then I do I do some yoga on the side because that's movement, but it's slower and more relaxed. And you can do like 10 minutes. Doesn't have to be long. But yeah, everybody finds their thing.
yeah, efficiency for sure. In an hour, just go burn like 1,500 calories.
Yep.
Yes.
Sounds good. Now I can have my ice cream. Well, and
Yeah.
I thought it was so cool, Kyler, when you're sharing that story about how you got so into what you were doing, like you're in that flow zone, right? Like you're just in it and your gym time, it just came and went. Like I totally feel like I've totally been there. But the irony of it is, because one of the things we promote inside Joy of Coding Academy is always, in this group, is always working smarter, not harder. And so like, the irony is that if you actually went for that activity, your mind would still be working on the problem. And like, cause sometimes we sleep and you wake up and it's there. And so doing those other activities and having that balance, you can get both. You can get the answer and you can get the gym benefit. Like,
And yeah,
That's very true.
yeah. Oh, so good. Such great stories. Thank you for sharing all that. I love it. I love it. An awesome question, Jason. This is great. I do want to be respectful of everybody's time because this was awesome. Thank you so much, Kyler. And Kyler, I have one quick question for you after. Are you able to stay just for a minute longer after we wind down? Awesome. Love it. Love it. Just because I was Zoom, everybody clicks off. So I want to make sure we're okay. It's not like a room where you can call out, oh, wait, at the end. Awesome. Awesome. So thank you so much, Kyler. This was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your approach to really full immersion and becoming that 6-figure software developer and finding an amazing position and sharing that with us today. We just so appreciate you taking the time to do that.
yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah,
happy to help.
definitely, for sure.
Love it. Love it. Well, and thank you all again for tuning in. Anyone who's tuning in online, thank you. Thank you for watching later. Thank you. Thank you. And if you have any questions, Kyler's in the group. I'm sure he would love to answer them if you tag him or me. You know, we're happy to connect you and get your questions answered. So I hope it's again, Emily from the Joy of Coding signing off. I hope you guys have an awesome, awesome rest of your day. Happy coding.
Bye.
Awesome. Awesome.